"Mrs. Bellamy, please, let me help you to your car. These bags are too heavy, and I know your arthritis has been bothering you lately." 22-year-old Cypress Moreau's voice was gentle but insistent as he carefully took the grocery bags from the elderly woman's trembling hands, ignoring the impatient customers waiting behind her at Riverside Market. It was Thursday afternoon, the same time every week when Mrs. Bellamy arrived, moving slowly through the aisles with her worn shopping list, buying just enough for one person living alone. "You're too kind, dear boy," Mrs. Bellamy said, her voice quivering with gratitude and something deeper, the bone-tired relief of someone who'd been carrying too much for too long. "But you don't have to do this every week. I'm sure you have other customers." "They can wait 30 seconds, Cypress said warmly, already heading toward the automatic doors. "Besides, you're my favorite part of Thursdays. You always have the best stories about your garden." What Cypress didn't know was that 70-year-old Iris Bellamy had been widowed 18 months ago, that her husband's medical bills had devastated their savings, that she lived in a small apartment now instead of the house they'd shared for 40 years, and that some weeks she chose between medications and groceries. She never complained, never asked for help, just appeared every Thursday with her quiet dignity intact and her shopping list carefully planned around what she could afford. And what Mrs. Bellamy didn't know was that Cypress worked 3 jobs, this grocery store position, night shifts at a warehouse, weekend landscaping, to support his younger sister through college after their parents died. He understood struggling to make ends meet while maintaining pride, understood the weight of carrying on when everything felt impossibly heavy. As Cypress loaded her bags into her old sedan, Mrs. Bellamy touched his arm gently. "Your mother raised you right, young man. The world needs more people like you." "My mama taught me that kindness doesn't cost anything, but means everything," Cypress replied. "She'd want me to help, especially someone as lovely as you." Over the months, their Thursday ritual deepened into genuine friendship. Cypress learned that Mrs. Bellamy's son worked somewhere in corporate retail, but they'd become estranged after her husband's death. Some disagreement about moving her into assisted living that she'd refused. She rarely mentioned him, and when she did, pain flickered across her weathered face. What neither of them knew was that 38-year-old Sterling Bellamy, CEO of the entire grocery chain that employed Cypress, had been conducting anonymous store visits, evaluating operations and employee performance. He'd stopped communicating with his mother after she'd stubbornly refused his practical solutions to her financial struggles, frustrated by what he saw as her pride getting in the way of common sense. One Thursday, Sterling happened to be observing Riverside Market when he saw something that stopped him cold. A young bagger carefully helping an elderly woman, taking extra time, completely unhurried despite the line forming. Sterling watched, ready to critique this inefficiency, when he recognized the woman. His mother. Looking older, frailer than when he'd last seen her 8 months ago. And this young employee was treating her with such tenderness that Sterling felt something crack in his chest. He followed them outside, watched Cypress arrange groceries carefully in the trunk, listened to their warm conversation about gardens and recipes, watched his mother smile in a way she hadn't smiled at him in years. That evening, Sterling reviewed Cypress's employment file. Stellar attendance, consistent positive feedback, but earning minimum wage despite clearly going above and beyond. And he made some calls, learning things about his mother's situation that shame burned through him, the unpaid medical bills, the small apartment, the careful budgeting that meant she sometimes skipped meals. The next Thursday, Sterling was waiting when Cypress helped his mother to her car. "Mrs. Bellamy?" Sterling said, approaching carefully. "Mom." Iris froze, shock and wariness crossing her face. "Sterling, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," he said quietly. "Why didn't you tell me things were this bad?" "Because you wanted to put me away," Iris said, her voice shaking. "You wanted efficiency and solutions, not to hear what I needed, to stay in my community, to maintain my independence, to be treated like a person with agency instead of a problem to solve." Sterling's throat tightened. Cypress stood quietly aside, sensing this was deeply personal, but present in case Mrs. Bellamy needed support. "I was wrong," Sterling said, the words clearly difficult. "I thought I knew what was best. I thought practical help was the same as caring. But this young man," he gestured to Cypress, "he showed you more real care in 5 minutes every Thursday than I've shown in months." He turned to Cypress. "How long have you been helping my mother?" About 8 months, sir, Cypress said carefully, since she started shopping here. And you never asked for anything in return? Never mentioned it to management for recognition? No, sir. Mrs. Bellamy is my friend. You don't help friends for recognition. Sterling felt the weight of that simple statement. Here was someone earning minimum wage, working multiple jobs, still finding energy to help a struggling widow out of pure compassion, while he, with all his resources and power, had let pride and frustration create distance from the person who'd raised him. I need to make things right, Sterling said, looking at his mother. And I need to learn from someone who understands what caring actually means. Over the following weeks, Sterling did something unprecedented. He worked shifts at the Riverside Market store, learning from Cypress and other frontline employees about real human connection, about seeing customers as people rather than metrics. And he began rebuilding his relationship with his mother, not by imposing solutions, but by listening, by showing up, by being present. He also quietly ensured his mother's financial struggles were addressed, medical bills paid, her housing secured, a trust established that allowed her independence while providing security. But the most significant change was in how Sterling restructured the company. Inspired by Cypress's example, he implemented policies valuing employees who went beyond their job descriptions to help others, created living wage standards, and built community connection into the corporate mission. 6 months later, at a company-wide event, Sterling stood at a podium with his mother beside him. This young man, he said, gesturing to Cypress in the audience, taught me that success isn't measured in profits, but in how we treat the most vulnerable among us. He helped my mother every week, not knowing who she was or what it might mean for his career, just because it was right.
He paused, emotion thick in his voice. Cypress Moreau, I'd like to offer you a position in our community relations department, developing programs that make our stores true community anchors, because you already know what that means better than any of us in corporate ever have. Cypress stood, overwhelmed, as applause filled the room. Later, Mrs. Bellamy hugged him tightly. You gave me more than help with groceries, dear boy. You reminded my son what really matters. You brought my family back together by simply being kind. Because kindness is never just about the immediate act. It's about affirming people's worth, seeing their humanity, showing up consistently even when no one's watching. Those small choices ripple outward in ways we cannot predict, healing relationships, transforming organizations, reminding the successful and struggling alike that we are all connected, all worthy of dignity and care. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.